me. I would like to mention that our new exhibition, Eat, Make, Share, A Taste of Immigration, will open on Saturday, May 10th. Due to our partnership with Open City, we're delighted to offer free admission to the exhibition for the day. Comme toutes nos expositions, à la table est entièrement bilingue. Elle est également colorée, significative et remettra en question les notions de nourriture canadienne. Mais attention, je ne vous recommande pas de visiter cette exposition lorsque vous avez faim. Mangez avant de venir. Like all of our exhibitions, Eat, Make, Share is completely bilingual. It is also colorful, meaningful, and will challenge notions of what Canadian food is. But beware, I don't recommend viewing this particular exhibition while hungry. Eat before you come. Thank you et merci.
Merci Rebecca. J'invite maintenant Madame Daria Goncharova, qui est chef de projet pour l'action climatique des jeunes au Discovery Center, à prendre la parole.
Merci tout le monde. Bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Je m'appelle Daria Goncharova et c'est un grand honneur pour moi de participer à l'Union des idées. Pour ma 4e fois, en tant que membre du conseil d'administration d'Alliance Française, ancien gestionnaire de projets de programme d'éducation à l'action climatique au Discovery Center et maintenant actuel gestionnaire des opérations d'un nouveau centre océanique situé à l'université Dalhousie, je ne saurais trop insister sur l'importance de la connaissance de l'environnement pour le bien-être de notre planète et par conséquent pour celui des humains. Changer notre mode de vie n'est pas très facile tâche, mais notre avenir sera façonné par nos actions actuelles. Aujourd'hui, plus que jamais, nous avons besoin d'actions immédiates et décisives pour atténuer les effets des défis sociétaux et environnementaux. Comme d'autres personnes dans cette salle, j'ai hâte d'attendre la discussion et d'apprendre des experts sur ce sujet. Merci à tous les partenaires et particulièrement l'Alliance française Halifax pour leur dévouement à rendre le français plus accessible dans la communauté atlantique du Canada. Et je vous souhaite de profiter de cette soirée. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Daria. Je passe la parole maintenant à Monsieur Bailey Ross, qui est président de Canadian Parents for French Nova Scotia.
Good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank organizers for inviting Canadian Parents for French. We are very thankful to be invited to be a part of this event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bailey Ross, and I'm the president of Canadian Parents for French Nova Scotia, the provincial branch of an organization that works to further bilingualism by promoting opportunities to learn and use French for all those who call Canada home. With the help of our tireless volunteers, staff, and numerous partners, Canadian Parents for French has become one of the leading organizations in promotion of advocacy for French second language in the country. Afin de nous assurer que tous les adultes et tous les élèves qui veulent apprendre le français comme une deuxième langue ont accès aux outils dont ils ont besoin, nous organisons plusieurs activités et événements sur la scène locale, provinciale et nationale, tels que le concours d'art oratoire Side Note. Il nous a besoin beaucoup de bénévoles pour notre concours d'art oratoire qui aura lieu la fin de semaine prochaine à MSVU. S'il y a quelqu'un parmi vous qui est libre, il nous faut des bénévolats. On a une foire de carrière bilingue, des fins de semaine familiales et des camps d'été. As an Anglophone who passed through the French immersion education system and then went to Francophone University and is now a French teacher in the Francophone board, I can tell you that it is imperative that we continue to develop welcoming spaces where folks of all linguistic backgrounds can learn the beautiful French language so they may contribute to the Francophone community in the future. We must also remove the barriers to FSL learning, such as linguistic insecurity, l'insécurité linguistique. Lors de ma jeunesse, j'ai pu siéger à plusieurs comités anglophones et francophones. Pendant chaque rencontre, je me suis toujours dit la même chose. Il faut que nous, les anglophones et les francophones, devenions des alliés. Il faut que nous nous reconnaissions comme des partenaires solides et unifiés, tels que les milliers de Canadiens et Canadiennes qui ont pris la décision d'apprendre la langue française comme moi. Je ressens un sentiment de fidélité à la langue, sa culture et son peuple. On veut défendre sa survie, on veut défendre son évolution et on veut défendre tous ces bels accents, peu importe d'où ils viennent, qu'ils soient un accent anglophone d'un débutant de français, l'acadien de l'abeille, le chiac de Moncton, Bréon d'Edmundston ou un français de la ville du Québec. Un accent, c'est un accent. We even have environmental issues in common as well. Counterparts, on the francophone counterparts of the Société nationale de l'Acadie et la Société acadienne du Nouveau-Brunswick have worked hard to lobby for more funding to modernize, for example, the Chignecto Isthmus in the face of greater climate change. I can think of no better way of making these changes. We need them with our community and government partners collaborating together. From the seed of working together to achieve a common goal, an oak tree of success and linguistic harmony will grow. I want to thank everyone who's participating tonight, and I wish you all a wonderful evening of discussion and networking. Je vous remercie d'avoir participé ce soir. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Ross. C'est maintenant au tour de Madame Bénédicte Vercamer, qui est la présidente du conseil d'administration de l'Alliance française à Halifax, de nous adresser quelques mots.
Merci Mélanie. Bonsoir, good evening everyone. C'est avec grand plaisir que l'Alliance française à Halifax vous accueille ce soir, comme annoncé à cette 7e édition de la Nuit des idées. Et nous remercions de nouveau sincèrement nos partenaires, le consul général de France dans les provinces atlantiques, le Discovery Center et le Musée canadien de l'immigration au Quai 21, Canada Parents for French Nova Scotia Chapter, avec le soutien de l'ambassade de France au Canada et de l'Institut français du Canada. Le thème de cette année, Pouvoir Agir, propose de questionner, je cite, les capacités d'action des États, des sociétés civiles et des individus face au bouleversement de l'ordre géopolitique contemporain, dans un contexte de fragilisation, de vivre ensemble au sein de nos sociétés. Ça, c'est une longue phrase. Mais ce soir, nous allons réfléchir et partager nos idées pour progresser. Donc, c'est de l'engagement à l'action. Depuis quelques années, l'Alliance française à Halifax s'est engagée dans l'éco-responsabilité et a formulé récemment son engagement RSO. C'est un acronyme que vous allez retrouver souvent, c'est responsabilité sociétale des organisations. Cet engagement s'organise autour de 4 piliers que je vous invite à découvrir sur notre table derrière ou bien bientôt sur notre site internet. Donc environnemental, sociétal, sensibilisation et solidarité, c'est 4 piliers qui nous tiennent à cœur. Cet engagement se traduit par des actions concrètes qui vont de notre réduction de l'impact environnemental au soutien de notre communauté. Et notre communauté que nous impliquons dans chacune de nos actions. Nous avons quelques exemples récents, un joli coin vert à l'Alliance française, notre guide de l'événement responsable, une future rampe d'accès pour n'en citer que quelques-uns. Car notre engagement est continu avec de nombreuses activités et initiatives à visée scientifique tout au long de l'année. Nous circulons ces idées dans nos communautés et ce soir encore, nous participons avec vous à ce partage. Je vous souhaite une bonne nuit pleine d'idées.
Merci beaucoup, Bénédicte. J'invite désormais au micro Monsieur Bertrand Quai, le consul général de France dans les provinces atlantiques.
Not the same size exactly. Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, Il n'est de réel plaisir que s'il est bref, aussi je vais essayer de l'être ce soir. C'est donc un privilège et un plaisir pour moi d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui à l'occasion de cette nouvelle édition de la Nuit des Idées Halifax dans ce superbe musée de l'immigration du Quai 21. Cette Nuit des Idées, elle est devenue un événement phare de l'Institut français en la matière. La toute première Nuit des Idées, elle s'est tenue à Paris en janvier 2016. Elle fut un véritable succès, rassemblant au Quai d'Orsay plus de 4000 personnes qui ont débattu déjà du monde de demain avec de grandes voix françaises et étrangères. Depuis 10 ans, cette Nuit des Idées, elle a essaimé sur tous les continents. Ce sont désormais plusieurs centaines d'événements qui sont organisés de par le monde, mais avec toujours le même principe. Célébrer la libre circulation des idées et des savoirs, en ce moment c'est précieux, en proposant des conférences, des rencontres, des forums et des tables rondes, mais aussi des projections et des performances artistiques autour d'un thème fédérateur, de façon à ce que chacun décline à sa façon. Le temps d'une soirée, des experts, merci à eux, se rencontrent pour échanger, confronter, partager leurs expertises et mieux nous livrer leur point de vue sur un thème ou une problématique figurant au cœur des défis soulevés par nos sociétés contemporaines. Cette année, le thème de la Nuit des Idées, Pouvoir Agir, invite la société civile, la jeunesse, et donc vous, à partager votre vision du monde contemporain, à échanger sur nos moyens d'action communs face aux grands enjeux de notre temps. L'Institut français du Canada, qui vient juste d'être créé, organise 9 événements de Vancouver à Moncton, en passant bien sûr par Halifax ce soir, en lien avec ses partenaires locaux. Un immense merci à tous les co-organisateurs, le Musée de l'immigration bien sûr, mais également l'Alliance française d'Halifax, Radio-Canada et le Canadian Parents for French et le Discovery Center. Je tiens enfin à remercier chaleureusement nos 4 panélistes et la modératrice. Nous sommes très impatients effectivement d'écouter vos échanges et je souhaite donc à toutes et à tous une belle et féconde nuit des idées et d'espérance. Je vous remercie. Bonne soirée.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Consul. Comme je disais tout à l'heure, donc Nathalie Guédry, animatrice phare de Radio-Canada, animatrice de la quotidienne de Musée, nous fait la joie d'être notre modératrice ce soir pour cette table ronde qui s'annonce féconde. J'en suis totalement convaincue. Nathalie, la parole est à vous. Bonne discussion tout le monde, bonne écoute. Merci.
1, 2, 1, 2, voilà. Merci, Mélanie. On va procéder par les présentations de chaque panéliste. We'll begin with individual presentations et ensuite suivront des échanges, des questions. Bien sûr, c'est votre nuit des idées, pas que la nôtre. Alors, bien sûr, vous êtes invités à proposer, formuler vos questions à la toute fin. Mais d'abord, on va passer aux présentations. Individual presentations. We are going to move so we don't have to crane our necks to watch the screen. We're going to sit in the front row. So if you want to, and at the same time, I will invite Sarah to speak first at the podium.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All good? Nice to be with you here all tonight. Hello, my name is Sarah Vanderkaden, and I am going to be speaking in English. I apologize. Yeah, so I work with an environmental NGO called Oceans North, and we are a registered Canadian charity, and our work takes us anywhere from a fishing wharf right outside our city here in Halifax all the way to United Nations international forums. So I'll speak with you a little bit about the work we do at Oceans North, and then talk a little bit about some local initiatives happening right here in our backyard in Halifax and Nova Scotia more broadly. Do I have clicker? Sorry. one's seen the clicker.
I'm like, did I touch it? Oh, there you go.
Full service here.
Thank you so much. I apologize. Okay, there you go. All right, let's see if I can work it now. That's the next. Okay, beautiful. We got it. Troubleshooting in real time. Awesome. So yes, so Oceans North, a lot of our work is focused on marine conservation and climate action. And it's one of our core values that we know that healthy oceans depend on healthy communities and a healthy climate. And so we really see this all being as very interconnected. And so fundamental to all of our work is working in partnership with coastal and Indigenous communities across the Canadian Arctic and the North Atlantic here. And some of our work takes us internationally as well. So that's really like the fundamental core value of all the work we do is working in partnership in all the places that we work. And yeah, so like I said, our work takes us from fishing wharfs to the United Nations. Our work is mainly focused in the Canadian Arctic, Atlantic Canada, the North Atlantic more generally. We also have a sister organization in Greenland, ONKN. And then we also are doing some work in the Central Arctic Ocean in international forums, and our work takes us to the high seas. And when we say the high seas, we're referring to international waters outside of country's jurisdiction. So that generally takes place 200 nautical miles outside of a country's coastline. And here in Canada, we really are a coastal nation. We have not one, not two, but we have 3 coasts, and we have the longest coastline in the world. So it's very relevant to us here. And of course, here in Halifax, we are really never quite far from the ocean. So the most people at Oceans North are actually based in Halifax. So a good chunk of our work is really, really centered in the city. Yeah, and then I thought I'd show a map of some of the work we do in Northern Canada. So you can see we're right here in the blip at the corner of the map. And a lot of our work is in partnerships with communities across the north. So actually tomorrow morning I'm getting on a plane and I'm flying up to that orange dot you see in the top left of the corner there to a community called Tuktoyaktuk. And that actually is a community of about 1,000 people right on the shores of the Arctic Ocean. And that actually Tuktoyaktuk connects us with the only highway in Canada that takes us to the Arctic Ocean. And that highway was only opened in 2017 that actually connected the rest of our country to the Arctic Ocean. So if you wanted to go on a really epic road trip, you could take it all the way to the shores of the Arctic Ocean. So our campaign areas. We, like I said, fundamental to all of our work at Oceans North is connecting healthy communities to a healthy climate and to healthy oceans. We recently revamped our website, so it was really an opportunity for us to reflect on the work we do, and we were able to think about our work in these 3 streams. So for the ocean, for the climate, and for communities. So a good chunk of our work is in support of marine conservation projects, which includes the establishment of marine and conserved protected areas across our country. Right now, the Government of Canada has international commitments to protect 25% of our marine and coastal space by 2020, and then 30% by 2030. And countries all over the world have also signed on to those commitments. And so our organization supports a lot of these processes in partnership with a lot of the communities where these proposed areas are based. We also do a lot of science work and working with communities directly to help them understand what's going on in their own backyards. So we are actually deploying hydrophones all over the Arctic so that communities can have a really good understanding of not only how different resource development projects are affecting their lands and waters, but just knowing what else is in their backyard and really giving them the tools they need to be able to have in their back pockets when they take part in these processes related to resource development. We also have a whole team that's focused on climate action. We are supporting the electrification process and decarbonization of the shipping industry. So there's We have a partnership here in Nova Scotia where the first electric lobster fishing vessel is actually in development. So that's really exciting. And then a lot of our work too, like I said, is based in communities. So working with communities in various places on supporting people who still practice on the land harvesting and really working to support those linkages between on the land harvesting and environmental stewardship and really positive health and social outcomes. So I kind of just threw a bunch of information at you, but what I really want to get at today is I think for those of us that work in this space, we sometimes take for granted why these issues are important and why we care about them. But it's really important sometimes to take a step back and think, how can we engage the public more generally about the work that we do and why it is important and why and how everyone can get involved and going to the theme of today, take action and make change and feel really purposeful in these crazy times that we're living in. And so these are questions that I ask myself a lot, like how can we engage the public on these issues and how can we inspire the public to take action and to care? And this is all happening at a time when we know that Canadians generally value our beautiful, unique natural environments on land and in the ocean. So these are some statistics from some polling that was done by CBLUE back in 2022. And CBLUE is a coalition of 8 environmental NGOs across the country. And it's specifically focused on supporting Canada and holding the government to account on these international commitments to protecting 25% of our marine and coastal waters by 2020. And so this polling was done with about 1,300 Canadians in every province and territory back in 2022. And these show that public views are really split on how people perceive the health of our ocean, with 52% of folks tallied in this polling saying they perceived the health of the ocean in Canada as being excellent or good, while another 48% indicated they thought the ocean was in fair or poor health. So you can see these views are very, very mixed. People are not, there's no clear consensus on how we're doing in terms of our ocean health. And at the same time, there's general low public awareness of what is a marine protected area. Sometimes I have to remind myself when I go home and talk to my family and I say the word MPA, people don't know always what this means. Like every sector has its own jargon. And so while the government of Canada has these commitments and there's great work being done all over the country, we aren't necessarily doing the best job at getting that information out to the general public. And you can see, so 40% of Canadians indicated they were aware of what a marine protected area is, and only 10% was actually aware of this international commitment that I spoke about. And yet, once people were explained what a marine protected area is in this series of polling questions, they indicated strong support for basically just enabling tools that can be used to protect our ocean. So just specific areas of the ocean where we say, we're gonna let the eelgrass in this area stay put, and then maybe we'll develop other things in other areas. And so this all brings me to like this need to engage the public on what we're doing and improve and really connect with Canadians on ocean literacy. And that is where Ocean Week Canada was born from, this need to and desire to want to start these conversations and talk about how connected we are as a world to the ocean, but particularly Canada, where we really are a coastal nation with the longest coastline in the world. And so Ocean Week Canada is an annual national celebration held during the first week of June, which is connected to internationally recognized World Ocean Day, which happens every year on June 8th. And Ocean Week Canada was formally launched in 2022 by the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition. With last year, there was over 24 events happening across the country. And this also emerged from Canada's ocean literacy strategy that was released in 2021. with Ocean Week Canada being launched the following year. And so interestingly, even though we have this internationally recognized World Ocean Day and we have Ocean Week Canada now, the roots for both of these initiatives actually trace back to right here in Halifax, proving that we really are not only Canada's ocean playground, but really the world's ocean playground. So the idea for World Ocean Day was initially conceived right here in Halifax by the founder of the International Ocean Institute, which is still based right here out of Dalhousie University. So the founder was Elizabeth Mann Borghese, and that idea was conceived in 1991. And then the Center for Ocean Development, which was a Crown Canadian corporation that was founded back in the 80s, they pitched this idea at the Earth Summit in Brazil the following year. So that idea for this Internationally World Ocean Day was actually pitched right from a Canadian institute based right here in Halifax. And then, of course, that kind of launched World Ocean Day being formally established and events kind of taking place right here in our city at the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic, right on the other side of the waterfront here. And ever since, we have celebrated the ocean and taken that as an opportunity to have really exciting events, just like our event here tonight, speaking with the public about what's going on in our ocean, what are organizations in this province doing, why should we care? And then, yeah, so then it kind of has continued to grow since. And in 2016, there was a really formal Oceans Week HFX, it was called at the time. So there's been various iterations of this over the years. And we had over hundreds of events happening in the city and from 2016 to 2020. And then, of course, during COVID, things kind of took a little bit of a hit. But after Ocean Week Canada was formally established by the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition in 2022. That allowed Ocean Week Halifax to have another resurgence, and we are now one of 13 regional hubs across the country. There's even an Ocean Week Saskatoon. There's an Ocean Week Cambridge Bay and Nunavut, Ocean Week Victoria. So we're Ocean Week Halifax, but we are connected to a national network of regional hubs. We have monthly calls where we're connecting on cool ideas for events and different strategies to engage the public and make sure that this initiative not only grows and succeeds right here in Halifax, but across the country. And that's been really, really great to be a part of. And we have such great support from the Kolk team. And, apologize. So I thought I would, given that it is towards the end of April now, and we're getting to the first week of June very, very shortly, which means I'm going to have a very busy month of May in planning this. So I'm one of 3 co-chairs for Ocean Week Halifax. And this year we have a full steering committee, and we started planning back in January. So we are really excited that this year is going to be hopefully bigger and better than ever. We have a really exciting schedule of events that we're going to be launching soon. But our flagship World Ocean Day event is going to be on Sunday, June 8th this year, right? Just really down the road from here in the Cunard space in the waterfront here. Let's all hope that we have a sunny day with low wind. The last few years have given us all 4 seasons in one day. So I think this is our year. And yeah, this event is really just an opportunity. Like, we're trying to make it a full festival. We're going to have music. We're going to have the Ocean, Freshwater, and Us giant floor map of Canada here, which basically is bigger than this projector right here. And it has an augmented reality component where you can explore all of Canada's marine protected areas and learn about them and learn about the people that live in the communities near these protected areas. We're going to have speakers throughout the day, and then we're going to have up to 20 different organizations doing great work in this province be showing off the work they do and educating the public about all the great work that goes on in this great province of ours. Yeah, lots of exciting interactive activities and crafts, opportunity for fun for all. The Marine Animal Response Society comes and does live animal stranding demonstrations to show what they would do if they get a stranded animal that they are called to respond to on one of our shores here in Halifax, in Nova Scotia. Yeah, and then like I said, so Sunday, June 8th is our flagship World Ocean Day event, but there's going to be a full schedule of events throughout that entire week from June 1st to 8th. So follow us on socials and stay connected to us and as we release that schedule of events. But last year we did a scuba diver talk and bio blitz where a bunch of local scuba divers presented and showed beautiful images about all the creatures that we see in our underwater playground here. They did that at the library last year. We also we're going to do another bio blitz. It was really successful last year. So the team from the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society took a group of scuba divers, snorkelers, and any paddlers, and they were able to document all the amazing life that they were seeing and input that into iNaturalist, which is a really great platform for citizen science, where you can take a picture of like a cool critter you see and join an online forum where they'll tell you, people will comment and tell you what the species is that you're seeing. Back to the Sea Society also is going to be doing another tidal trek where they go down to the Dingle Park and they explore the intertidal zone and just get to be fun and play with critters and thing. This is a giant sculpture of a North Atlantic marine whale that we're going to try to have on the waterfront again this year. And we use that as a kind of a metaphorical tool as we do beach cleanup sometimes and underwater cleanup. So the picture on the right here was from underwater dive against debris and a shoreline cleanup that was held at Africville Park last year. And we actually had the opportunity to fly use an underwater ROV and show folks from the Africville Museum the actual critters and everything that they were seeing underwater, that the ROV was picking up underwater, to really show those connections from what we can't always see underneath the surface, but is right there, and we're so close to it all day long. We also did a Marine Careers networking event. So we had folks from different marine sectors come and meet with various students. This was held at Dalhousie. It was almost like speed dating, like talk to any marine industry representative that you're interested in, just to show people all of the opportunities to get involved in working in the ocean outside of just the typical sectors that we think of. So much of our livelihoods here in Atlantic Canada are so intricately tied to the ocean and the coastline, and we just really want to open students' eyes up to all of the things they can do once they graduate, whether it is continuing to stay in academic and study the ocean, or if it's doing something like I do and working with communities and working on a policy level, or it's having a really cool water taxi business where you're shuffling folks out to McNabb's Island every day. There's so many opportunities. And I thought I'd leave you today with this quote from the great Jacques Cousteau: "We only protect what we love, we only love what we understand, and we only understand what we are taught." And for me, that quote really embodies what the main goal of Ocean Week Halifax and ocean literacy is more generally. It's just an opportunity to engage with people and have you take a moment to reflect on how humans are not separate from the environment, not separate from the ocean, but we are part of it. And it's really an opportunity for celebration for me and connection, rather than kind of like scaring folks with facts about all the ways that our oceans are changing and the doom and gloom of it all, but inspiring ocean optimism. And for me, I think that's the most effective way to inspire change and for folks to get involved. So if anyone wants to talk about any of our initiatives with Ocean Week Halifax, I'd love to share more. My email's right there. I'm always happy to chat about anything. And I hope that you'll come and enjoy us this upcoming Ocean Week coming up soon. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Sarah. I love that quote at the end. Alex Cadel, c'est à vous.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Je vais parler en anglais ce soir, mais d'abord, je veux dire que c'est absolument possible de travailler avec Climate Atlantic en anglais ou en français. So if this type of information is interesting to you and you're looking for more data or resources or tools, feel free to connect and we're happy to provide that in either English or French. So tonight I'm going to be speaking about climate change and really trying to provide some local context for what climate change looks like. Because at times I think this is a topic that can feel very far away if it's happening to people we don't know in places we've never met, or people we have never met in places we've never been. But the reality is most of us experience climate change in our own communities, in our own lives, in the work that we're doing. So I really wanted to bring the local context to what's happening here in Nova Scotia. So I'm going to talk through 5 trends using these lovely infographics from the province on how our climate is changing here in Nova Scotia. So the first of these trends is that it's getting warmer. We're seeing temperatures rising. So even just looking at where we are now compared to the recent past, our average temperature is about 1.3 degrees or so warmer than it used to be. And I think that's a really interesting number because I'm sure many of you have already started to see changes in your own lives in terms of the types of extreme weather that we're seeing in this province, the way that seasons are feeling, the types of species that are around us and things like that. And all of those changes are again with about 1.3 degrees of increase in our average temperature. So as we're looking further into the future towards probably 2.5 degrees or so by the middle of the century, as high as 4.5 degrees towards the end of the century, just recognizing how much more change might be associated with that level of temperature increase. We can also look at things that relate to how our seasons feel. So for example, how hot does it feel in summers? And I'm showing here 29 degrees Celsius is usually where we issue a heat warning here in Nova Scotia. Historically, we'd see an average of about 2 days per year that met that threshold. And then towards the middle of the century, getting towards 14 days or 2 weeks. Towards the end of the century, 30 days, over a month that could be under that heat warning criteria, and just recognizing how challenging that might be for our health as humans, for the environment around us, even some of our infrastructure that isn't really well designed for those higher temperatures, things like that. We can also look at winters. I hear from many people about how much milder winters are than they used to be, and that's absolutely carried through in the climate data as well. As temperatures warm, winter is warming the most rapidly out of all of our seasons. So we can see our average temperature in winter getting closer to 0 degrees, so the freezing mark, which is why we're seeing snow and ice be less consistent on our landscape, things like that. And then finally pointing out that there are opportunities as well that are worth considering. So a sector like agriculture, for example, is really interested in longer growing seasons, getting a month longer towards the middle of the century, potentially getting close to 2 months towards the end of the century. Really thinking about, can we use that longer growing season to produce more food here, grow different types of crops? But of course, also pairing that with the caution that sometimes those higher heat conditions are really beneficial for different pests and diseases and invasive species that might be really challenging for our local ecosystems. So even where there are those opportunities, trying to understand how to plan for and manage them appropriately is really important. The second of these 5 trends that I wanted to mention is around changing precipitation patterns, so rainfall and snowfall. And the first thing to understand here is that as our climate continues to change, we're seeing more precipitation per year on average. And again, this is an average. We know that some years are wetter or drier than others. That's normal. But on average, we're getting a little bit wetter. And that's a reflection of the fact that as our atmosphere gets warmer, it holds more moisture. So that when it does rain or snow, it tends to come down more heavily in more intense events. So around 10% or so more precipitation towards the end of the century is sort of what we're on track for. One thing that I like to mention along with this is that more precipitation falling doesn't necessarily result in wetter conditions on the ground, because thinking about those higher temperatures I was just talking about, that does also drive up rates of evaporation, for example. So it's an interesting situation where when it does rain, it tends to rain a lot more intensely. We increase our risks of flooding and things like that. But the periods between rainfall might dry out more quickly because it's hotter, increasing risks of things like droughts and wildfires. And then also showing here with changing precipitation patterns, the type of precipitation that we get is changing, because as it gets warmer, we're more likely seeing rain instead of snow, just because it's not cold enough for snow to actually form. So looking in Nova Scotia here, we'd see an average of about 39 days per year with snowfall historically. Towards the middle of the century, getting down to around 25 days, so 2 weeks less of snowfall. That's quite substantial, and even further towards the end of the century. And again, thinking about the balance of what's happening here, if we're getting less snow, shoveling snow can be really physically strenuous. That results in some injuries. We're maybe avoiding some of that. Maybe we're spending a little bit less money on clearing our roads. But of course, snow is also really important for protecting our fields from erosion. It's really important for a lot of our native species, really important for recharging our groundwater supplies and things like that. So again, trying to understand the interesting nature of some of these changes on things that we care about as people. That leads nicely into that third trend around more frequent and intense storms. And really, this is referring to the tropical storm, hurricane type events that form in the tropical Atlantic and do occasionally impact us here in Nova Scotia. And really, this increase in intensity is driven by oceans that are getting warmer that enable these tropical systems to travel a lot further north before weakening. It's exactly the kind of conditions we saw with Hurricane Fiona about 2.5 years ago now, where if you look at the sea surface temperatures along its trajectory north, they were several degrees higher than they would usually be at that time of year. And that's one of the reasons that storm was so impactful, why it broke so many records here in our region. Those kind of conditions might be more common in the future. So we still might not see a hurricane every year, but when they do hit us, they'll tend to be more intense on average. So that brings more powerful, more destructive storm surges and waves to our coasts, accelerating erosion, for example, certainly more intense precipitation, more intense rainfall, and even higher peak wind speeds as well. So thinking about what that means for trees being uprooted, power outages, there's a lot of things there that we can prepare for around storms as well. The fourth trend I wanted to talk about tonight is rising sea levels. And this is really a combination of things about why this is happening, both in terms of the water in our oceans expanding as it gets warmer, more water being added to our oceans as we're seeing polar ice caps and glaciers melt. Nova Scotia is naturally subsiding, so that's accelerating the rate of relative sea level rise that we're seeing. And even some changes in our currents are accelerating the rate of sea level rise here. So here in Nova Scotia, we're seeing some of the highest rates of sea level rise in the country. To put some numbers to that, it's up to a meter or so by the year 2100 is sort of what we're on track for under a higher emissions future, and could potentially be even higher than that if, for example, ice sheets melt faster than we think they will. And that's, of course, something that we're keeping a very close eye on for a province like ours. Beyond the coastal flooding that I think comes to mind for a lot of people when we're thinking about rising sea levels, also important to think about saltwater intrusion. So if anyone has a well near the coast, that water might become saltier over time, might eventually become unhealthy to drink, for example. And rising sea levels can also pose a real challenge for many of our coastal ecosystems. Things like sand dunes or salt marshes that really play an important role in protecting our coasts from events like those larger storms I was just talking about. If sea levels are rising and they don't have room to move and expand, those ecosystems might be squeezed out and not be able to provide the same types of benefits that they have in the past. And then the final trend around changing climate here in Nova Scotia is related to changing oceans. So the physics and chemistry of what's happening offshore. So here we're seeing rising temperatures within our ocean, both at the surface and in deeper water, with marine heat waves getting longer and more frequent. We're seeing some changes in our ocean currents. Folks might have heard of, the Gulf Stream off our coast is a really important current for us. There's some evidence that that and the whole system of currents in the Atlantic Ocean that it's connected to are slowing down. That could have some implications for us here. We're seeing our oceans becoming more acidic. That poses challenges for a lot of organisms that form shells, things like mollusks, crustaceans, and corals. As waters get warmer, they're also able to hold oxygen a little bit less. So there's a bit of a decreasing trend there as well. And really all of that combined poses some challenges for many of our species that are found in the marine environment that are important commercially and recreationally, culturally, ecologically, things like that. So that's a very quick overview of what's changing with our climate here in Nova Scotia. Again, hopefully that's a bit of a useful background. There's a lot more information if that type of data is useful for whatever it is that you're doing. But to really take information like that and move us towards the topic for this evening, which is around taking action, I wanted to bring in a couple more concepts here. And one of these is climate risk, because really everything I've talked about so far is the hazard component here. It's what's changing. But of course, we know that we as people and communities and ecosystems, we're not all impacted equally by these changes. So to really get a fuller picture of what's happening and how we want to address it, we can bring in some other concepts as well. Things like exposure. So is there something that we care about? People, a community, an infrastructure asset, a species in a location that's being impacted by temperature changes, more intense precipitation, storms, things like that. And elements of vulnerability as well, both in terms of the sensitivity of those things. For some species or for some people, a small change is really, really important. And in other cases, a small change is something that we can adapt to and it will be fine. So understanding that amount of sensitivity and even the capacity that we have to cope or adapt. So thinking about the knowledge, the skills, the financial resources, the connections that we have, all of that influences how we're able to take action. So maybe just to put one quick example to that, I was talking about extreme heat earlier. Even if a heat wave is covering all of Nova Scotia as the hazard part of this, people who are working outdoors might be a lot more exposed to that heat wave than someone who's working indoors in a climate-controlled environment. Someone who has a heart condition might be more sensitive to that extreme heat than someone who doesn't have those underlying health issues. And if someone doesn't have the ability to purchase and run an air conditioner or doesn't know signs of heat stroke, doesn't know where the cooling centers are in their community, that sort of thing, they're much less able to cope with that. They're more vulnerable to that sort of event. So the reason I sort of introduced that framework is I think it does provide some interesting opportunities for us to think about taking action. Because we can think about, the importance of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to try to avoid some of the hazards I was talking about as we move further into the future. But we can also think about adjusting the exposure of us as people, as communities, the ecosystems that we're interested in. Think about adjusting sensitivity, think about increasing the capacity that we have, reducing our vulnerability as individuals and as society to some of these effects. And then finally, bringing in home this idea of taking action, I wanted to leave you with this framework. This is from a scientist called Diana Elizabeth Johnson. She talks about this in a lot more detail. I'd encourage you to find her work if this is interesting to you. But a question that I often get is how to take action on climate change, given everything I just talked about. That is a whole lot of changes, a whole lot of impacts across every area of society. We're looking at impacts on the infrastructure and services in our communities, impacts on our health and health of our families, health of the ecosystems around us, the livelihoods of the people in our communities. There's a lot there to think about. So rather than me giving you a list of, hey, here's the things that you can do, I think it's much more impactful to really give some critical thought to what it is that you can bring to a topic like this. Thinking about what you're good at, what skills, what resources, what connections do you have that you could bring to tackling a problem like this in whatever way makes sense to you? What work do you see that I just talked about that needs doing? And also thinking about what brings you joy. This is a large issue. It can be really challenging at times to work in. So, and there's enough work that needs to be done that you might as well select an area of it to work on that is impactful for you and that's meaningful for you. So it's really the intersection of those things that can really define your climate action. So whether you're an educator and looking to connect with students or something like that, whether you're really passionate about gardening and want to start a community food security project in your community, advocacy. There's just so many different avenues that we could think about here that would all have an impact on our preparation as a province and as communities and as individuals for the changing climate. So I will leave it at that. Again, if any of this sounds interesting, happy to take questions and happy to follow up with people. This is the kind of work that I do all of the time with the province and with Climate Atlantic. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alex. What brings you joy? That's I didn't expect that. Najla, now I invite you to.
Bonsoir. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about a different topic than the two previous presenters. So my name is Najla, and thank you for having me here. I am working as a housing settlement support at the Halifax Refugee Clinic. So I'm going to talk about some of the work that we are doing for changing some of lives. Okay, so about the Halifax Refugee Clinic, we have these three words. You can stay. Those three powerful words that change the trajectory of lives. They change the lives of babies, children, youth, and adults who have fled their homelands and arrived seeking refuge in our province. So who we are, Halifax Refugee Clinic was founded in 2000 by the lawyer Lee Cohen. So we are a non-profit organization providing legal and settlement services for refugee claimants and at-risk non-status migrants from legal representation for refugee and immigration process to access housing, community service, navigation, and also accompanying and do everything in between. We have existed for 25 years, and this is our celebration today, this year, our anniversary. And we grew out of a dire gap of in the legal aid services for refugee claimants. Historically, we were a small organization, but now we are getting bigger and bigger. So I want to give you tonight an overview of the Halifax Refugee as an organization and the work we do and to try to do justice to what the forced migration experience look like here in Nova Scotia for refugee claimants and asylum seekers. So some of the services that we provide, as I mentioned at the beginning, legal services and settlement services. The legal services has many kind of services. It started with representing the claimant or refugee claimants with the immigration for their refugee claim. We assist them with filling out their application, go through the process with them. Also try to, at the end of the process, we help them to get their PR, permanent residency application. Settlement service, we welcome our clients at our office. We provide them with all kinds of services that help and support them to stay and live in Canada, starting with any applications that they need for their stay, accessing the health services and accompany them to their medical appointment, try to refer them to the services that are available in our community. Also, we start with them the income assistance application. We have also, for the last year or almost 2 years, we have employment support. So we have an employment specialist who helps them to get their jobs and get a decent income and afford their living cost. So our clients, if we talk about our clients, the clients that we serve come to us from all over the world and are integrate part of our community and society. They are from Venezuela, Haiti, Colombia, Nigeria, the Congo, Sudan, Palestine, to name just a few. They are fleeing persecution, violence, and oppression. And we believe that all and that everyone deserves to live in safety and dignity here. Our clients are diverse. They may be a young women forced into marriage, human rights defenders, a journalist uncovering a corruption scandal, a political opposition member, a person targeted by gangs or cartels, a member of the queer community, an ethnic or religious minority. Also, they only have the community of legal system they find themselves navigating and the structural barriers that they're precarious and conditional immigration status that they encountered. The client's law that we have, as we know, wars, humanitarian crisis, economics, disparity, climate crisis, and human rights abuses all over the world, and interconnected and influenced global migration partner to Canada. And our clients and the rise in demand for our services tripled in the past few years. Where we once served 50 to 100 clients per year, and at a time we now have a clients load for more than 550. Due in part to increased migration to Canada over the years and increased interprovincial migration to Nova Scotia, as well as the growing backlogs at the refugee board, which I will speak about in a moment. And we are seeing not just our client load grow by people's essential needs be unmet, the cost of living and the acute housing crisis that Halifax and most other cities across the country is experiences. This proportionally affect already marginalized groups, especially refugees, refugee claimants who often have very fewer resources and very limited access to the kinds of services and benefits that most citizens and permanent residents take as given. The current and the present backlog of 278,457 files at the RPD in January 2025, in the context of a system designed to only process 50,000 or so files annually, continues to result in greatly extended timelines for hearing. Delays at the RPD, as well as long systematic delays in overseas families, the reunification process also put both financial and mental health pressure on claimants. Although we have already seen reduction in certain sources and types of refugee claimants due to immigration policies and practices and a closure of Wrexham Road in March 2023, we are still anticipating a sustained number of refugee claimants over the next year from other avenues and sources, including the federal government's 2025-2027 levels plan, which will reduce the number of new permanent residency by more than 20%, leading to an increase in refugee claimants from international students who are escaping conditions which meet the definition of persecution in their home countries and came to Canada in anticipation of an economic pathway to permanent residence and safety and protection. We are also anticipating a rising number of refugee claimants across the border to Canada regularly or through the Safe Third Country Agreement exemption. Due to Trump administration's policies, immigration-related executive orders, and the growing claimants of fear that undocumented migrants have in the U.S., arising from dangerous anti-migrant and anti-refugee rhetoric past and present. Such as the call of mass deportations, ICE raids in school, detentions, and recent order for termination of all categorical and humanitarian parole program. So while the Wrexham Road border has been closed for the last 2 years, the expansion of the STCA, as well as the increased severity and enhanced border control is in response to tariffs, migrants has and will make entry more difficult. Refugee claimants will continue to enter Canada, often at great risk, great personal risk for sure. All this backlog and delays increase border security and restrictive immigration policies, coupled with the under-resourcing of government agencies and departments, including cuts of funding for immigration settlement agencies and lack of federal and provincial collaboration on the issue of asylum. Is designed to dissuasive and punitive, and these policies are combined, of course, by the increasing of government anti-asylum rhetoric, making a shift in position. So a few years ago, the tweet heard around the world of Canada will welcome you is being replaced with will. To be clear, not everyone is welcome here, which is at least more honest in terms of a practice, you could say, and exposes our immigration system that has some success and benefits, certainly compared to many others in the world, but is still structurally deeply settler, colonial, racist, Islamophobic, and capitalist, and one that treats people very differently. As evidences crudely by the fact that although the numbers of most racialized refugee claimants crossing the RR border in Quebec in 2022-2023 were touted as high as unimaginable, an invasion almost, At 40,000 people, 300,000 Ukrainians arrived to Canada, and over 900 applicants were approved under the special visa program. That same year, sorry. Every fleeing war, occupation, and danger deserve refuge and safety, whether they be from Ukraine or Afghanistan or Palestine. Compare these numbers to the special measure program for Gaza and Palestinians who have been facing unrelenting war and genocide for 19 months, where the cap was placed first at 1,000 applicants and then later increased to 5,000 applicants due to public pressure, and still only under 700 have actually arrived to safety in Canada. All this to say that immigration or refugee claimants faces many challenges due to their immigration or their status. So immigration status is an important and often overlooked socially determinant of health and directly informs one's ability to access legal representation, healthcare, employment, education, and safe, affordable housing. Restrictive eligibility criteria for programs and services due to immigration status both at federal and provincial level disproportionately affected refugee claimants and keep them in poverty and not able to afford their living cost. Also, growing anti-migrant, anti-refugee, and anti-asylum sentiment and negative government rhetoric contribute to the stigmatization of refugee claimants and other group of racial newcomers and increase their already made challenges in settlement in Canada. Poverty and precarious housing, including raising amount of refugee claimants and sheltered homelessness, contributes to social marginalization and increased mental health issues, and in some instances, interaction with the criminal justice system, which lead to complex migration implication. So, by talking about refugee claimants and the challenges that they face on their settlement in Canada, and talking about how, like, taking action, making a change, there is a lot to do in terms of how to change their lives or how to support them. Some of the recommendations that we always raise when we have meetings and presentations that we should start by secure access to temporary and long-term housing, because many of our refugee claimants arrive without a stable housing option and are at risk of being homeless. So we always advocate for increased funding for emergency shelters and transitional housing specific for refugee claimants. Second one is ensure immediate and ongoing access to healthcare, which is a huge part of their well-being. So refugee claimants are eligible for the intern federal health program, which covers some of their health services, but many face delays or gap in care due to lack of the information or providers' hesitation. So the action that we should take is focus about educate both claimants and healthcare providers about the IFHB and what it covers and how it works, and streamline accessing to primary and mental health care. The third one is community-based support services. The issue that we face is navigating housing and healthcare system can be overwhelming for claimants unfamiliar with Canadian process and system. So the action we should focus on is to develop and fund a wrap-around support program involving caseworkers, interpretation, and peer support. All this to say that there is work to be done. It requires a collective effort and solidarity across sector, movement, forces, historics, laws, program, and politics that shape forced migration to and within Canada. Most importantly, it calls for centering the life experience for the really human beings impacted by this forced migration. In terms of the Halifax Refugee Clinic and the work that we are doing, the advocacy work to make a change, the Halifax Refugee Clinic is also committed to engaging with community and advocating for refugees, migrant and social justice in all spheres and to all levels of government. We have been actively involved in various advocacy and knowledge transfer initiatives, including academic research projects such as GBB, Child Protection, Refugee Healthcare, Newcomer Women Employment. Also national and local advocacy campaigns such as End Migration Detention in Nova Scotia prisons, to advocate for healthcare access to all and housing for all. Media, commentary, community working groups and coalition, community interagency partnership like a newcomer healthy clinic, which the Halifax Refugee Clinic was one of the founder, partnership with iScience. Workshops, the presentation, guest teaching, and university lecturing, government liaisons and stakeholder sessions, and many other local, national, and international efforts and initiatives for refugees. I would like to end my talk by acknowledge that we are in Mi'kmaqi and the ancestor and unceded territory of Mi'kmaq people. Canadian settler, colonial structured violence, and white supremacy continue disposes and oppress their indigenous people. And it also the same force that inform immigration policies and practices. And it's essential that we all, settlers and newcomers to this land alike, that we all not forget that this struggle are interconnected and recognize that we are guests in Mi'kmaq territory and that we must honor the trees of peace and friendship by welcoming and supporting all those in need on this land. Thank you.
Thank you, Najla. En terminant, la dernière et non la moindre, Réjane Sénac.
Alors, bonjour. Je vais essayer d'être brève pour laisser un peu de place aux questions. Merci beaucoup pour votre accueil. Alors, vous allez avoir la chance d'avoir un accent du sud-ouest de la France. Hein. Vous qui êtes ouvert aux accents, ça tombe bien. Donc, je vais faire ma présentation en français avec des slides en anglais. Les points communs entre les interventions qu'on vient d'entendre, c'est la manière dont on interroge notre conception de comment on peut habiter le monde aujourd'hui. Habiter le monde aujourd'hui ensemble, en ayant conscience qu'on a abîmé les ressources, tout ce qui faisait de notre commun sur la Terre, que ce soit les océans, la manière dont on s'est approprié les ressources, la manière dont on a aussi colonisé et utilisé les populations qui habitaient les territoires. Et moi, ce que je vais vous montrer aujourd'hui, c'est une recherche très brièvement que j'ai faite en France sur le commun, justement, entre ces questionnements à la fois écologiques, dans une phase de prise de conscience de ce qu'on appelle l'anthropocène, hein, c'est-à-dire comment les activités humaines ont modifié l'équilibre géopolitique, et aussi les questions sociales, c'est-à-dire comment les populations les plus vulnérables, et vous l'avez dit dans vos interventions, sont aussi les plus impactées par les changements environnementaux, écologiques et en particulier climatiques. Alors, la question, c'est vraiment comment penser le futur dans une période critique à plusieurs titres. Et donc, je vais rapidement présenter, je voudrais être très, très brève. Ce qui m'a intéressée, c'est de voir les mobilisations qui sont des mobilisations contre les injustices qui sont à la fois globales. Quand on regarde, par exemple, Youth for Climate, C'est des démarches qui sont internationales, ou Extinction Rébellion, Black Lives Matter, MeToo. Donc, il y a une dimension vraiment internationale. Mais là, moi, j'ai travaillé sur le cas français. Et comment ces mobilisations-là, qui posent les questions de fin du mois, fin du monde de manière entremêlée, la question des inégalités économiques et sociales, la question des enjeux écologiques, comment on n'est pas seulement à chaque fois dans des causes parallèles qui portent des enjeux spécifiques, mais dans une dimension qui est une dimension très imbriquée. Donc, c'était ce qui m'intéressait, c'était de voir que c'était à la fois une critique d'une manière traditionnelle de faire de la politique à travers les corps intermédiaires que sont les partis politiques ou même les syndicats ou les associations, une critique vis-à-vis de la démocratie représentative, des élites qui portent les intérêts d'un capitalisme outrancier qui en effet s'accapare et met en danger notre rapport à l'environnement de manière assez large, mais comment c'était aussi une réappropriation de la démocratie au sens d'une nouvelle manière de participer à ce qu'on juge juste, et c'est ça la définition du politique, c'est la conception de ce qu'on juge juste et agir pour que ça advienne. Et en effet, qu'on puisse habiter le monde de manière ouverte, en ayant une vision cosmopolite de l'application de nos principes. Donc, j'ai fait une recherche où, alors je vais très vite parce que je sais qu'on est un peu en retard et que j'aimerais que le débat puisse être possible, mais l'idée, c'est que le rapport à la démocratie, c'est toujours un défi, c'est toujours un processus. La démocratie au sens de démocratie libérale, de défense des droits fondamentaux. Vous êtes bien placé, on est bien placé aujourd'hui pour en avoir conscience de la fragilité, de ce qu'on pensait sans doute acquis depuis la fin du XXe siècle. On croyait à la fin de l'histoire, en tout cas, à une forme de sécurité en termes de démocratie libérale, et c'est loin d'être le cas. Donc, comment est-ce que, il y a en particulier un ouvrage sur le féminisme des 99% qui est intéressant, comment le féminisme, l'antiracisme, l'écologie, la lutte contre les inégalités sociales peuvent faire front commun pour penser une société qui soit une société, un monde habitable pour toutes et pour tous dans les meilleures conditions. Donc la question de qui est acteur et actrice de cette libération et de cet horizon d'un monde émancipé, sur le vers quoi on va, quand on agit, pourquoi faire, taking action, pourquoi, et de quelle manière on doit pouvoir faire cette mise en cohérence. Et si on reprend plus en termes de République française, notre devise, qui vous savez est une très belle devise, liberté, égalité, fraternité, que je préfère décliner en adelphité pour pas exclure les sœurs, ou en solidarité, on voit bien que cette devise qui porte les droits fondamentaux, la complexité de la mettre en œuvre sans incohérence, sans contradiction. Donc, ce qui m'a intéressée, c'est de voir la convergence des luttes ou l'alliance entre les féministes, les antiracistes, les écologistes, ceux qui travaillent pour la justice sociale, la lutte contre la pauvreté, et pour aussi la question animale, contre la maltraitance envers les animaux, l'antispécisme. Moi, ce que j'avais comme hypothèse, puisque dans les recherches, on a toujours des hypothèses, on a à la fois une énigme et puis des hypothèses. Mon hypothèse, qui était une hypothèse très XXe siècle en réalité, c'était que c'était l'égalité, c'est l'horizon d'égalité qui faisait commun entre les écologistes, les antispécistes, les féministes, les antiracistes. C'est un peu plus compliqué que ça, comme toujours. Donc moi, j'ai fait un terrain où j'ai interviewé en particulier 130 responsables d'associations avant le confinement et pendant le confinement en France. Et puis, plus récemment, j'ai de nouveau fait 60 entretiens écologistes et antispécistes. Et j'ai fait des observations aussi de terrain. Je suis allée dans des refuges animaliers. J'ai suivi des actions, en particulier d'associations écologistes et animalistes. Donc, ce que j'ai trouvé intéressant, c'est que dans cette synergie des luttes, il y a l'idée que l'important, c'est de faire confiance à une forme de spontanéité. C'est-à-dire qu'il y avait l'idée que comme il y a un ennemi commun, qui est le néolibéralisme, le capitalisme à outrance, qui se retrouvent spontanément, par exemple, devant les locaux d'Amazon, gilets jaunes, gilets verts, gilets noirs, parce que ce développement de la rentabilité à outrance est à la fois mauvais pour la planète, pour les ressources, et creuse les inégalités sociales, et aussi dans une logique qui instrumentalise certaines parties de la population contre d'autres, en particulier dans des dimensions raciales. Donc l'idée de l'ennemi commun, il est très fort. Et il y a le cas du chlordécone qui se passe dans les Antilles françaises, donc qui était un pesticide qui a été légal plus longtemps dans les Antilles qu'en métropole, et qui a empoisonné à la fois les terres, mais aussi la population qui buvait l'eau, qui mangeait donc les animaux qui s'étaient nourris de cette terre. Et là, on voit bien que se mêlent les questions de justice écologique, mais aussi de justice sociale, et la question de la lutte contre le racisme. Donc l'idée, pour reprendre une expression de Léon Straussky, c'est marcher séparément, donc chacun en fonction de ses spécificités, de son histoire, porte des causes différentes, mais en même temps frapper ensemble, c'est-à-dire faire des alliances pour être efficace. Et cette idée que on porte des utopies concrètes, avec à la fois une radicalité au sens où il faut travailler sur les raisons, sur les causes des inégalités, et de manière fluide, en faisant à la fois des alliances, mais aussi dans une logique de diversité des tactiques, puisqu'il y a à la fois du plaidoyer en termes de loi, de changer la loi, mais aussi de la désobéissance civile quand on juge que la loi n'est pas légitime, n'est pas juste. On va faire de la désobéissance civile non violente, comme par exemple l'Extinction Rébellion peut le faire, ou d'autres mouvements. Et l'idée, c'est qu'on va se réapproprier ce qu'on considère comme étant le politique, au sens de faire advenir un commun juste, en n'attendant pas que les structures aient changé, c'est-à-dire en vivant dans l'ici et le maintenant, en faisant vivre dans l'ici et le maintenant des espaces de justice. On m'a beaucoup dit, puisqu'en France, comme vous le savez, on est assez fan des révolutions, et on m'a beaucoup dit, il n'y aura pas de grand soir, il n'y aura pas de matin qui chante, mais il y aura des jardins partagés. Et cette métaphore du jardin partagé, qui peut s'exprimer à travers la permaculture ou à travers des espaces comme on vient de nous le présenter, des espaces d'accueil, hein, est intéressant sur cette idée de mettre en place des utopies réelles, des utopies concrètes, et de ne pas attendre demain pour changer le monde aujourd'hui. Travailler à la fois sur le fait de changer le monde demain, en particulier en changeant le droit, mais aussi en le changeant aujourd'hui. Et donc, il y a la question, c'est comment est-ce qu'on passe d'un diagnostic qui est très global, puisque le diagnostic, c'est qu'au niveau mondial, il y a des choix économiques en termes de mode de production et de consommation qui sont des choix contradictoires avec le fait d'habiter de manière responsable la planète, et on l'a vu sur l'intervention aussi bien en termes sur les océans ou sur le changement climatique. C'est notre surproduction et surconsommation qui a accéléré cette destruction de nos communs, de notre vivre ensemble. Sur les réfugiés, on voit bien qu'il y a des réfugiés qui sont liés au changement climatique, au conflit. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on peut aujourd'hui habiter le monde? Donc, le diagnostic, il est vraiment au-delà des frontières, il est très global. Et la manière dont ils vont agir, c'est à la fois de manière globale, mais aussi de manière très locale, par une mise en cohérence locale, par des actions locales. Donc moi, je leur demandais, mais comment vous passez de vos actions locales, est-ce que vous revenez au global? Et on me répondait par une métaphore de nouveau, qui est une métaphore maritime, ça va vous parler, sur l'idée que les îlots feront des archipels. Donc les îlots d'initiative feront des archipels. À la fois, c'est intéressant comme manière de penser, mais la politiste que je suis était un peu intriguée sur comment est-ce qu'on va quand même arriver à porter aussi en termes de rapport au respect d'un cadrage politique, de droits fondamentaux, quelque chose qui ne sera pas uniquement des initiatives parsemées mais quand même un cadrage, repenser un cadrage qui soit un cadrage efficace, puisque par exemple, pour tout ce qui est justice écologique, les initiatives personnelles, on le sait, sont importantes, mais elles ne sont pas suffisantes. Et si on n'a pas les conditions de possibilité en termes d'évolution des normes, des lois, ça rend très difficile les initiatives personnelles et ça peut amener des culpabilisations individuelles qui ne sont pas très efficaces. Et ce que nous a démontré, en particulier, nous ont démontré les interventions, c'est qu'il est essentiel que ce ne soit pas que ceux qui ont les moyens d'agir qui le fassent, mais que les plus vulnérables, qui sont aussi ceux qui font le moins de dégâts sur notre planète, puissent avoir les moyens d'être vertueux. Les Gilets jaunes en France ont été créés justement par plutôt les classes populaires qui trouvaient ça injuste qu'on mette une taxe sur l'essence en les culpabilisant d'utiliser leur voiture alors qu'ils avaient peu le choix. Donc, cette prise de conscience de nécessité d'être vertueux, en particulier d'un point de vue écologique, il faut que il y ait des structures politiques qui permettent, en fait, en particulier le développement du transport public, ou avec d'autres modalités qui permettent d'être vertueux. Donc, les îlots font des archipels en termes d'initiative, oui, mais comment est-ce qu'on crée un océan qui soit un océan beaucoup plus vertueux de manière générale? Ça, c'est un vrai enjeu. Donc, cette idée d'émancipation commune, Daniel Ben Saïd parle de mots blessés pour l'égalité. C'est ce que j'ai entendu, moi, dans mes recherches, c'est-à-dire que le principe d'égalité, les Français, ils sont à la fois très attachés et en même temps, ils ont l'impression qu'on n'a pas été à la hauteur de cette promesse républicaine. Donc, il y a cette idée de redonner confiance dans notre projet commun, que ce soit nationalement, en France, au Canada, dans toutes les démocraties libérales, parce que sinon, on voit bien que la tentation populiste qui donne des réponses simples à des problèmes complexes, elle est très forte. Donc, cette idée de recréer, en fait, un projet commun qui soit un projet, vous avez parlé de joie, vous avez parlé d'accueil, vous avez parlé de bien habiter cette planète ensemble. Et donc, ce projet-là, à travers la métaphore du jardin partagé ou de l'océan partagé, de l'habitat partagé, il est très fort puisque nous habitons le même monde, la même planète. Donc, dans ce mouvement qui est plein d'espoir, puisqu'il y a quand même... Moi, je vois, et on l'a entendu là dans les 3 premières interventions, mais moi, je fais mes recherches auprès de tous ces activistes qui sont qui mettent en acte ces idées, ces belles idées de liberté, d'égalité et de solidarité. Donc, je trouve que le thème de la Nuit des idées est très beau, puisque c'est la Nuit des idées qui montre que l'enjeu du politique, c'est de faire que ces idées-là, ces principes, deviennent notre réalité à travers des actions. Et merci beaucoup aux 3 activistes engagés qu'on a vus, qui participent à ce que notre monde, à tous les niveaux, soit un monde partagé, plus juste et heureux. Donc, merci pour ces actions qui rendent hommage à ces beaux principes, puisque les idéologies, c'est pas des choses dont il faut se méfier, mais c'est des choses qu'il faut qu'on porte ensemble pour être à la fois dans un monde juste et heureux pour toutes et pour tous. Merci.
Merci bien, Réjane. We can all have a seat, start the discussion, commencer la discussion. Je vais me présenter un peu plus formellement. Je m'appelle Nathalie Guédry, j'anime l'émission de radio La Musée sur les ondes de Radio-Canada à partir d'Halifax, ici même, diffusée sur la Nouvelle-Écosse, l'île du Prince-Édouard et Terre-Neuve en fin d'après-midi de 15h30 à 18h sur semaine. Alors, et voilà, merci d'être là tout le monde. Par où commencer? Bravo, merci. You've brought forth so many different points of view. Actually, I've taken notes. I have a question for you, Sarah. Ocean Week, Saskatoon. What does that involve?
Well, I think
Le micro. Et pour un peu de contexte, Saskatoon, c'est au milieu des prairies, c'est pas près des océans. Alors, c'est pour ça que je pose la question. On a tous ri un petit peu quand on a eu écho de Oceans Week, Saskatchewan. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that actually, speaking about that, is a good question to speak to like the goal of Ocean Week Canada as a whole, right? And like trying to going back to the Canadian Ocean Literacy Strategy, I think the goal is really to get Canadians, regardless of where we live in the country, connected to the ocean and why the ocean matters. So whether, because we say, you know, like the oceans regulate our climate. Alex spoke very succinctly about that, and it doesn't matter whether you live in Saskatoon or here in Halifax or in Paris. Like we say, every second breath you take comes from the ocean. And so I think Ocean Week Canada and the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition is doing a really great job at trying to build that network across the country and just celebrate our ocean connections. That's really the goal.
Wonderful. Alex, I'm curious about your background. How did you come to become a climate scientist?
Great question. So my background is as a scientist by training. I actually just found out we went to the same university, which was fun. But my background was in environmental science, and then I did a master's degree in climate change as that started becoming more of a thing. And yeah, for the last 10 years or so now, I've been doing work like this in various organizations. But maybe that allows me to just comment on one thing that I think is pretty interesting about doing this sort of work is that people find their way to it from a whole lot of different backgrounds, because as climate change has become more prevalent in people's daily lives, it's drawing in people from a whole lot of different backgrounds that have interests and concerns in this issue. So I get the opportunity to work with a whole variety of different people with a whole variety of different perspectives. And it's really kind of getting to what some of Réjane was saying. It's the meeting of perspectives that really drives a lot of this momentum forward. Like I can bring climate change expertise to a conversation, but it's really working with farmers and engineers and whoever else, teachers, all of these different people that have expertise in their own subject matter. That's where we really get to new innovative things. And that's why I really enjoy the work that I get to do.
Great. On Monday, there will be a federal election. Climate change, the environment, seem to have taken a back seat to a lot of other issues. How do you feel about that, both of you?
I think for me, and my perspective here again is as an employee of the province and things like that. So we're not an advocacy organization or anything like that. But for me, as long as I really want people to understand the issues, both at the political level as well as people who are voting in elections at whatever level, so that they can make their own determinations about what their priorities are. If you're looking at some of the information I was sharing tonight and thinking, oh, we really should be doing more around food security or whatever it is, protecting our oceans, there's specific issues there that are important to you as an individual, and you should be able to vote in whatever way that you see fit, but understanding what it is that you're voting on and what different platforms each party is bringing to the table. It's really that piece about informing that is so crucial to be able to make a good informed decision for the future.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think at Oceans North, we spend a lot of time obviously thinking about these issues and thinking about the political climate that we're doing our work in. And I mean, I think we're very cognizant of the fact that like thinking about the environment and being concerned about climate change and ocean protection can be an issue of privilege. Like not everyone has the time and capacity to be thinking about what marine protected areas are coming up with when they're just trying to like, you know, get their groceries at the store. So I think acknowledging that is important and not trying to be sensitive in the way that we're going about our work and having these conversations. But I think from an ocean literacy perspective, we are trying to just educate and educate and engage with the public that these issues are really not separate. Like you spoke about really eloquently, Najla, like it is, they're all connected. And if we don't have a healthy environment and healthy houses, like you're saying, to live in and a place to live, like we really can't focus on some of these other issues as a society. So that's the way that I like to think about how everything is actually interconnected at the end of the day.
Alex?
Just to add something quick to that, the comment about privilege for thinking about issues like this, I think an important one, and one that we didn't really have a lot of time to touch on today. But a big part of, again, what I'm trying to do with talking about climate change is making the connections to what people already care about. Again, seeing connections to health and livelihoods and food and energy and just all of the things that we need to live a good life. And I think oceans probably has some very similar connections to, we can't have a conversation about food security without thinking about climate change, or housing, whatever it happens to be. There's just a lot of pieces there. So understanding these really cross-cutting holistic issues helps us tackle all of those different individual issues that have different priorities for all of us.
Najla, I'm wondering in your work, staying on the climate theme, if you have seen through the refugee clinic some climate refugees, have you seen firsthand the effects and what that brings to your workplace?
I think since we have many clients from different backgrounds, from different countries, and then when they arrive here, they see the weather, the changes, and I think it also something for them shocking for some of the clients, especially for people who come from very warm countries. And to be honest, it's one of the main challenging things for people when they come here, because they come here first, it's a new country, new culture, new climate, new, atmosphere, environment. So it's shocking and it really brings them some depression. So we sometimes we see people that they don't want to go out because of the cold weather, or because they don't have enough or the right clothes for this weather. So it affects them personally, and it affects their even well-being and their ability to navigate the system and to go out and to work. We have some clients who will say, "Oh, it's snowing. I am not gonna be able to go for work today because of the climate, changes that they see here." So we see this, and I think it's a part of the new challenges that they face when they come here. Different system, different climate, different weather. Dealing with the snow, with the ice, even affects their ability to go out or to drive, or to connect with people. Some of our clients will say, I would like to go to the English classes, but it's icy, it's snowing outside. So it prevents them even from integration process,
Can I ask you about your background? How you came to be at the clinic, and
Oh.
Are you from Nova Scotia?
No, I'm originally from Palestine, Gaza Strip, and I came here in 2019 as a student. As a student at Halifax, I finished my master's degree in adult education, women leadership, and community development. I was working with Antigonish Women's Center as the immigrant support program coordinator, and then I moved 2 years ago to Halifax to work with the Halifax Refugee Clinic. So it's part of my also personal experience coming here as a newcomer. So I know sometimes, like, when people talk about the changes that they face, I know I say, oh, I see, yeah, I see that, I lived that, I know that. So it's part of my personal experience, and it helps to put yourself in their position and know what they are going through, so you understand their struggle. You went through some of these struggles, even though maybe it's different, but still how to provide them services and to help them.
Yep, great. Thank you for sharing. Réjane, le climat politique actuel, je vais avoir recours à mes notes ici parce que j'en ai pris. Il y a vos observations. J'aimerais vous entendre parce que les points que vous nous avez présentés, c'est des recherches qui datent ça a pris plusieurs années dans certains cas. Quelles sont vos observations en les appliquant au contexte politique planétaire actuel, un contexte très réactif par rapport à un certain gouvernement au sud de notre frontière, gouvernement américain? comment vous voyez les choses, la situation actuelle?
Alors, je pense qu'on peut le prendre par l'enjeu de la démocratie libérale, hein. C'est vrai que, en France, on a la République française, mais qui est une déclinaison quelque part ou une expression, un peu différente de la démocratie libérale, de la défense des droits fondamentaux. Moi, les personnes que j'interviewe ou que je suis, elles sont vraiment de ce qu'on appelle un républicanisme critique, c'est-à-dire comment est-ce qu'on peut être à la hauteur de nos principes et de la même manière à la hauteur des droits fondamentaux pour, pour les appliquer à toutes et à tous, sur tous les territoires, avec une crise écologique, avec des inégalités économiques et sociales. Je vous avoue que les politistes sont assez déstabilisés aujourd'hui, et pas que les politistes, hein, mais par quand même la mise en danger de ce qu'on pensait être au fondement des démocraties libérales, dont la démocratie américaine. Le respect du pluralisme, le respect des droits fondamentaux, des principes d'égalité, de liberté d'expression, enfin. Donc c'est vrai que c'est un contexte pour penser l'application de ces principes qui sont normalement protégés par des déclarations universelles des droits de l'homme, par des habeas corpus. Donc c'est un contexte qui est un contexte assez déstabilisant d'un point de vue international, d'un point de vue européen et français. C'est intéressant parce que y a une affirmation et une défense d'un attachement à ces principes. Et je pense qu'au Canada, de la même manière, hein, ça serait, on se reconnaît encore plus peut-être comme démocrate, hein, au sens de démocratie libérale et pas, pas au sens politique de démocrate contre républicain. Donc, je trouve que ça amène à se poser la question de l'identité commune, hein, de l'identité commune d'un point de vue national, d'un point de vue international, de comment est-ce qu'on veut habiter ce monde, qu'est-ce qu'on considère vraiment comme faisant sens. Donc, je trouve que là, il y a peut-être, et ce que me disent d'ailleurs les personnes que j'interviewe, d'autant plus la nouvelle enquête que j'ai faite en 2024 et début 2025, c'est que c'est à la fois un grand risque, hein, de mise en danger de ce qu'on pensait défendu, au moins en termes de principe, hein, même si on pouvait critiquer la mise en œuvre, mais il y avait quand même cette idée que toutes les démocraties libérales étaient censées défendre le pluralisme, les droits fondamentaux. Donc il y a à la fois une sentiment de vulnérabilité écologique, politique, économique et sociale, et dans le même moment, il y a une forme de nécessité et de fierté à défendre ces principes-là. Et beaucoup d'activistes que j'interviewe me disent c'est une chance d'être, je ne sais pas si si c'est une forme de résilience et si vous le pensez aussi, mais que c'est une chance de vivre aujourd'hui parce que c'est une opportunité pour défendre justement la démocratie libérale et pour arriver à faire alliance entre tous les démocrates du monde, les Canadiens, les Français, en première instance aujourd'hui, puisque nous sommes dans ce dialogue-là. Mais en tout cas, les personnes que j'interviewe sont dans cette logique-là, qu'il faut une solidarité pour pour habiter écologiquement le monde, hein, et que on ne peut pas défendre une conception responsable d'un point de vue écologique si on ne fait pas alliance. De la même manière, voilà, et de la même manière, pour défendre la lutte contre le sexisme, contre le racisme, la lutte contre toute forme de discrimination en fonction de l'orientation sexuelle. Enfin. Donc là, j'ai l'impression que ça fortifie au contraire les engagements de celles et ceux qui étaient déjà sur ces sujets, mais qui le vivent comme une nécessité d'autant plus vitale dans une logique nationale, mais aussi plus largement internationale.
Les jardins d'entente prennent de l'ampleur en ces temps turbulents. Climate optimism, Sarah. because I think some of what Réjane and all of you have touched on, what brings you joy, there's an element of optimism and not giving up, and you keep going, and what motivates you. Can you explain the notion of climate optimism a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, climate optimism, ocean optimism. I mean, I think it's easy in this day and age. We could sit up here and we could share a lot of really scary statistics and talk about a lot of the really horrific things that are happening in this world right now. There's no shortage of that. You'd only have to turn on the news for 5 minutes and know all of that. So, I mean, obviously, I mean, just as citizens and people that work in these spaces, it's important to be informed and knowledgeable about everything going on, and not to be apathetic. But I think I personally believe, and I think I have continued to be affirmed with this belief through the work that I do, that I don't think fear is what instills change in people. I think as humans, we need to have a purpose, and we need to have something that we feel connected to. And so for me and in my work and in my life, I have found that getting involved in community, regardless if that's like I'm a scuba diver. So for me, like just going diving and exploring like the shores of St. Margaret's Bay, like that is what makes me feel motivated to continue to do the work I do. And that's out of love, not out of fear or hatred or anything. I find like, I'm not a psychologist, but I find on a human level, it's just a little bit of a more powerful way to inspire change and action.
And to briefly touch on one of the points you brought, Alex, what brings you joy? I don't know, this has stuck with me clearly, but isn't that also the key to sustainable change? When people care, people are engaged, people, they're invested in the long term.
Absolutely. And I think kind of relating this back to some of what else we've talked about tonight, I'm often asked to frame climate change as a scientific issue. I have a background as a scientist. I apparently do that reasonably well. Hopefully that came across today. But really where we need to start with an issue like climate change is it is an issue of values. And I think you touched on this a little bit as well. Thinking about we're out of alignment with what the system is requiring of us. That's capitalism and colonialism and white supremacy and just all of these really challenging social constructs that have shaped our values of how we interact with the world. So really, when we're talking about climate change and some of these larger environmental issues, that's the place where we need to start the conversation. And I think not everyone sees themselves in a scientific conversation, but everyone can see themselves as having a voice in a values-based conversation. So again, I think that's, again, part of what brings us joy, what nurtures us through working through really challenging processes. It's seeing ourselves in the future that we're trying to create, right? It's fundamentally an issue of what do we want our future planet, our future generations to look like? And let's work now to how we get there. And I think that's something that we all have an opportunity to provide input on.
I don't know if you have any questions amongst yourselves. I didn't, give you the opportunity to ask each other questions. I don't know, je ne sais pas si on a des questions ici dans la salle, des gens qui ont des choses à ajouter. A bit shy. Un peu timide. Ou tout a été abordé.
Merci beaucoup. J'ai une question pour Madame
Réjane.
Vous avez parlé des jardins communautaires comme structure politique, très intéressant, mais que devient du syndicalisme européen versus le Canada versus le syndicalisme disparaissant aux États-Unis? Est-ce que vous avez un commentaire là-dessus? Parce que le syndicalisme représentait à un moment donné une structure politique peut-être différente.
Oui, merci pour votre question. En fait, j'ai fait d'autres recherches où j'ai interviewé des responsables de partis politiques ou des syndicats. Là, j'ai choisi de m'approcher plutôt des associations ou des activistes qui sont dans des collectifs plus fluides, parce qu'on voit, pas seulement en France d'ailleurs, mais qu'il y a une montée en puissance de ce type d'engagement, avec une méfiance vis-à-vis corps intermédiaires constitués qui sont plus associés à une démocratie représentative classique qui représente les élites. C'est-à-dire que même les syndicats, avec une conception qui n'est pas homogène en fonction des pays de ce qu'est le syndicalisme, on est dans une syndicalisation qui n'est pas obligatoire en France, qui est pas très importante en fait en proportion par rapport à d'autres pays où elle est assez automatique, l'adhésion. Et les citoyens lambda ne se sentent pas forcément représentés d'un point de vue significatif par ces corps intermédiaires. Mais on voit bien qu'il y a une complémentarité en fait entre le travail que font les syndicats sur les conditions de travail en particulier, que font les partis politiques autour de la démocratie représentative et ces mouvements qui sont plus des mouvements de la société civile et qui mettent à l'agenda public des sujets qui ne l'étaient pas forcément, sur les violences en particulier sexuelles ou sexistes, à travers MeToo qu'on peut citer, mais pas seulement, sur la question du racisme ou des violences policières, sur la question de l'imbrication ou pas, justice sociale, justice écologique. Donc on voit que tout ça est assez complémentaire, en sachant quand même qu'il y a un point qu'on a peu soulevé, mais le rôle des réseaux sociaux aussi, qui fait que on voit bien qu'ils arrivent à porter et à faire passer des sujets dans le débat public sans forcément avoir le relais des médias classiques d'emblée ou des organisations, qu'elles soient syndicales, partisanes, à travers les partis politiques ou des associations, grâce aux réseaux sociaux. Alors, on le voit à travers les hashtags, MeToo, Black Lives Matter, mais pas seulement, en fait. Ils peuvent être assez peu nombreux, mais s'ils arrivent à avoir une visibilité à travers les réseaux sociaux, ils peuvent vraiment discuter dans le débat public de sujets qui ne l'étaient pas par les partis ou par les syndicats. Ça donne quelque chose qui bouscule. Moi, j'ai fait des présentations dans les syndicats qui sont assez bousculées parce que c'est souvent des militants qui sont des militants sur des dizaines d'années, qui s'engagent dans un syndicat avec un corpus idéologique bien déterminé. Et ils sont déstabilisés par des activismes beaucoup plus mouvants de la part des jeunes générations. Et c'est vrai que... et qui aussi habitent l'espace public d'un point de vue à la fois virtuel à travers les hashtags, mais aussi concret. Les nuits debout, par exemple, qui ont été à la fois dans les pays du Maghreb, mais aussi dans les pays européens, aussi aux États-Unis, enfin un peu partout. Cette idée d'habiter vraiment le refaire discussion en habitant l'espace, en mettant des slogans féministes dans la rue, des slogans antiracistes. Enfin, donc il y a vraiment une autre manière de bousculer les sujets dont on discute, qui en parle, avec aussi cette idée que parmi les syndicats, parmi les partis politiques, c'était encore plutôt les personnes favorisées qui avaient la parole. Donc, ça les bouscule. Mais ce que je trouve intéressant, c'est que sans doute, ça les amène aussi à intégrer ces enjeux, à intégrer ces questions. Dans le cadre du confinement avec la Covid, il y a eu des partenariats, des travaux qui ont été faits entre les syndicats, les associations, les partis politiques, pour porter un autre monde d'après. Alors, on a vu qu'après, ça ne s'est pas passé aussi, on n'a pas changé autant qu'on aurait dû changer sans doute, mais il y a des relations entre ces activistes. Et parmi ceux que j'interviewe, ce qui est intéressant, et qui sont maintenant plutôt dans des associations ou dans des activismes un peu fluides, c'est souvent des anciens syndiqués pour les plus âgés, ou ils étaient dans des partis politiques et ils ont l'impression qu'ils n'arrivaient pas assez à faire bouger des choses à travers ce type de militantisme. Et donc, ils ont été dans d'autres types de militantisme. Donc, ce n'est pas hermétique. On peut avoir l'impression que c'est hermétique, mais ça ne l'est pas du tout. Il y a vraiment des circulations. Donc, c'est... Ce que moi j'ai vu, c'est qu'on a souvent une lecture qui est une lecture assez clivée, aussi bien des causes, avec d'un côté les féministes, les antiracistes, les écologistes, ceux qui travaillent contre la pauvreté, alors que tout ça est lié, vous nous l'avez montré. De la même manière, sur les types d'actions politiques, entre les partis politiques, les associations, les syndicats, il y a souvent des circulations. Et c'est ça qui fait que ça discute dans le débat public, c'est mis en agenda, qu'il y a des pressions qui sont faites. Et souvent, même les partis politiques, certains en tout cas, sont heureux que Youth for Climate ou d'autres fassent pression pour qu'on change, que les partis politiques puissent aussi faire bouger les normes, bouger les lois. Donc tout ça est quand même souvent en synergie.
Je crois que c'est une bonne façon de conclure. Mais le dernier mot, Mélanie?
Merci Nathalie. Le dernier mot, c'est un grand merci. Merci d'avoir fait part de vos expertises ce soir, de vos expériences qui ont nourri une discussion très riche. Merci Nathalie pour ta modération, comme toutes ces années, depuis ces 7 années où on fait la nuit des idées en Nouvelle-Écosse. Merci chaque public pour votre patience, votre présence et votre attention. Il y a fort à parier qu'on rentre tous et tous ce soir à la maison la tête pleine d'idées, c'est le cas de le dire. Maintenant, c'est à nous tous d'endosser le rôle d'ambassadeur et un nouveau jeu de mots d'actionnaire pour marcher vers un monde plus juste sur le plan politique, social, environnemental, à bien des égards. Merci à tous et c'est sur ces mots que je conclus la nuit des idées. Merci.